You can't hear me? Is it getting better yet? Yes. Well, if you start with kind of the translation, the definitive translation of Potvin is pot of vintage, bottle of wine. Potvin. They were, and it's if you go up to Quebec, up in Canada, Potvin is grease money. It's a bribe. It's in all the documentation that if you're a consultant, you'll say, I will not accept Potvin. You will not accept a bribe. There you go. Yeah. They died of liver disease. Yes. Yeah. They all did. Yeah. It's a tea latte. I love my Chobani creamer and my frother. It was one of the things that I got for the lockdown was a frother. So now Starbucks just holds nothing for me. Yeah. Yeah, it was just, to get these nice creamy frothy beverages and I got them beat. So we're good. We're good. It hasn't. I had COVID way back in March. I was Sonoma County patient number 10. I had told the doctor I'd never been a 10 before, so that was interesting. But I got over COVID, thank God. It wasn't as severe as some people obviously has had it and passed away from it, very severe. And for me, it wasn't that big a deal. We lived in an RV at that point. We were traveling around the US trying to figure out where we were going to land, where we were going to live. We had sold our home. And we just continued to, every 6 weeks, kind of go to the next RV place that we already had reservations for. And life didn't change that much. We had a huge pantry. We had all our needs. Our entire home was encased inside our RV, our 42-foot RV. So I worked from there. Microsoft said, stay inside your home, work from there. Everything you need was given to us. So I'm kind of a loner. I have my partner, my husband is also my teammate. We're on the same team at Microsoft. So yeah, life didn't change that much for me. I'll let you think about that one. Oh, they came to me, Microsoft came to me and said, do you know somebody else with your skills? We need another person with your skills. And I'm like, I'm married to him. And so they interviewed him and they loved him and they hired him. So yeah, we're on the exact same team, but this is the fourth time we've worked together. Yes. Yeah. We lived in a 400 square foot RV together for 2.5 years and worked together. Most people are like, yeah, they do all right. Yeah. Multiple books, yeah. Crushing the IT gender bias, yeah. Yep. A lot of STEM education, yep. Um, I wrote some of the curriculum for Oracle Education Foundation for their DTech Academy. That is the high school students that go to school. Their academy is on the Oracle headquarters. Well, it still is. Well, it's in Silicon Valley. It's right there. That's those high school students. I taught their original and wrote their original curriculum for Python on Raspberry Pi. So I'm the one who wrote all. I had a lot of fun. I like STEM education. I'm really just reliving my childhood because a lot of this didn't exist when I was a kid, and if it did, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do it. It was kind of frowned upon as a girl to get into that kind of those kind of games, those kind of everywhere science and tech was more for boys at that point. Was yeah. Yep. I remember that. Yes. No, this is why I do 120 words a minute now. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing slowing me down now that I'm actually known as the keyboard killer. Microsoft used to give me keyboards before I came and worked for Microsoft because they'd have me test them out. They'd be like, here's another one, Kellyn, beat this one up. My keyboards on my Surface Pro 7, which I'm on right now, they last about at the max 4 months for me. I beat through them. I'm a command line person. I don't really use GUIs in any um, form. If you put me in front of the Azure portal, I'm quite lost. If you put me in front of the Azure CLI, I do very, very well. I do everything in Bash scripting. I'm a bizarre person in Azure because I'm both. I'm Oracle as well as SQL Server. I do MySQL, Sybase, Informix. You name the database platform, I've probably worked on it. I started out as a DBA, but I do DevOps. I do, you've seen me with some of, talk about Raspberry Pi and that. I did project management. I'm really good at herding cats. I found that for me, the C level really wasn't interesting in any way. So I kind of focused my leadership skills more in the community. That's why you see me on both. I've been the president of my Oracle user group the same time I was the president of my SQL Server user group. So I've kind of just, reached out there and mentored people and supported my community and tried to give back to it. And that's really kind of supported my leadership skills without having to give up those technical challenges I really enjoy in my career, which I felt I was asked to give up if I went into a leadership position inside my actual professional role. So that's worked out well, that balance for me. But I've done just about all of those things and I've just really enjoyed it. But I am an odd duck in Microsoft in that I do focus on Oracle and Azure. I had been there for literally about 4 months, realized that Oracle was just this huge anchor holding back a lot of projects. And I said, you can lift and shift them. And they said, we've tried it. It doesn't work well. And I'm like, that's because you're doing it wrong. And started to show them how to lift and shift them correctly. And that's been a major, monstrous grassroots initiative. We have over 1,700 customers running Oracle and Azure infrastructure as a service today. And there's about 4 of us that do it inside Microsoft professionally. It's as a full-time role, it's a huge undertaking for us. I'll let you count that. Yeah, it's crazy. Yes, I did 250 this year. Yeah, this last year for 2020. You scale through partners. Um, you start talking to the partners, they'll tell you, I kind of bring them on and go, you can do this. You have these people that can help me. Let me introduce you to this customer and this customer and that customer. I've gotten everything set up. I put put the kind of the foundation in place. Can you please do this from here? Can you adopt this customer here? I need your product. It helps me scale faster. Your product can allow me, I do a lot of Exadata migrations, so these big engineered systems on Oracle, being able to decouple them and move them onto Azure. So that's what I do mostly. Yes. None of those. You're hearing that. You're hearing that. No, what I do is actually decouple the database and put it on infrastructure as a service. I supplement it with things like there's products from Azure NetApp files to Silk, because IO is already always our headache. But then when we start talking about those engineered features such as storage indexes, hybrid columnar compression, flash caching, flash logging, I'm going to go in with what's called the automatic workload repository, the AWR. I'm going to find out what is using those features, how much of those features that it's using, and then I'm going to reverse engineer it and bring it back into a cloud environment. That means I'm going to start to eliminate a lot of that IO. I'm going to supplement it with Oracle products such as advanced partitioning, advanced compression. With Silk, I'm able to almost build an engineered system among VMs inside Azure. So I will have compute nodes and management nodes that'll be able to handle all of this. And then I start to just kind of decouple it and get it built out there. And I will optimize as I go along. Yep. And I'm sure you have challenges with some of that where you're like, this workload doesn't go to SQL DW. This is an OLTP. So I can take all of that and just lift and shift it. And my idea is that I can lift and shift it fast, and then the customer can slowly pick off those pieces of the workload that would do better in SQL DW that should have gone to Synapse. And I love SQL DW. The idea that that is almost the love child between Exadata and Azure, I think is phenomenal. The idea of multiple parallel processing with 60 database nodes that you can run that off, that's absolutely very similar to offloading. So there are products of that. When we start going into the idea of compression that's in there, the management, when we start talking about MViews, materialized views, that's absolutely something in Oracle that we utilize so often. There are products in there that are fantastic to support a lot of the OLAP workloads from Exadata. But to say, oh, I can just lift and shift it over, you're going to have challenges where if I can bring it over and then you can slowly pick off pieces and put it into Cosmos DB, get it into PostgreSQL. For customers, that's a powerful message for them to say, you're not just stuck on this engineered system, and I can bring it over and then you can do this as you need without just doing this shock. I mean, it's absolutely like taking it and going, here you go. I went and refactored all of that SQL. How's it performing for you? Probably not so good. Where I can bring it over and get similar performance, and then you can start peeling it off the layers. We could keep going. Yeah. Yeah. My favorite cheese. Um, I love cheese. I think cheese is another food group. But probably a lot of the blue cheeses are my favorite. So I do love Stilton. But I usually want something a little bit softer that I can put on a cracker, and I'm gluten free. So it's like finding something that doesn't affect my celiac that I can have is lovely. All cheese, all cheese. Yeah. No, no. Then usually the data and the research that went into it really blows people away. I mean, I did have to come back because so many folks, even editors, that were saying, this is your opinion. And I'm just like, no, there's already research on this. Back when I started back in 2010, 2011, there wasn't the research and the investment into, data to back all this up. We knew it was happening, but folks just weren't interested in it. We were told we don't talk about this. And I was seeing that. So for me, I started out as a DBA on a team of all women. And within about 5 years, all those women had disappeared. I couldn't understand why they had left the industry. Within 9 months, the junior DBA I'd started out with had left the industry. And I was completely appalled. She had a degree in database science, we will say. She was single. She had no children. She wasn't married. And she's like, I'm not going to make it. And I could see the bias and the challenges she was going through because it was incredibly unintentional many times, these little pinpricks. I call it the death by 1,000 pinpricks. And I looked at myself and I had a newborn baby. My youngest was a baby at this point. He's now 20, almost 21. And I was married. I didn't have a degree. I had come back into technology as an accidental technologist, as we talk about. And I'm like, if she can't make it, how am I going to? So this was really astounding to me that we were seeing this many women disappearing. And so I started going to lunch with them and having deep talks. I wanted to understand why they left. And all of them had different, I'm not going to say excuses because this was their lives, their experiences, what they were going through. But what it boiled down to were all the same situations that I had gone through too. But I had mentors, allies, sponsors, as well as just this persistence. I'm extremely stubborn and extremely persistent, refuse to give up. Somebody puts me in a corner, I am going to fight my way out. These few little things all bundled up together allowed me to not just succeed, but to be happy and satisfied in my career. And I've gone through those frustrations with them. But when I noticed that I was starting to build up on those pinpricks, that I would do a little bit of self-care and that I was able to work around it, I'm like, what if I can share that self-care? What if I can help others and help them get through this? So I started reaching out after 2011, after one of the women who had been a mentor to me, as well as my lead at one point, had come back and worked with me, and she had finally hit her 1,000 pinpricks and left. And I said, no more. No more women are leaving. So I started women in tech organizations in almost 27 different countries. I was going to all these different Oracle events. And I shouldn't say 27 different countries. I should say 27 different states in Europe and everywhere else. I really started investing in it, and I started learning. I had lucked out that I had run into Jen and Sean McGowan at my first SQL Saturday in Denver. And it was one of those where I walked into the SQL Saturday in Denver, and I'm looking around, I'm going, where'd you get them all? And they're like, what? I said, the women. I live in Denver. I have never seen this many women, and they're all at a technical event. Where did you get them? I have 7% and you have 40. I need to understand what's going on. So, I mean, they explained the challenges they had gone through, how they had worked through it. And I agreed with everything they were saying. They were having real conversations. One of the things that on the Oracle side at that time, we were being told not to talk about the real stuff, just pretend to be what we call the happy, shiny people. Everything's good. We're women in tech and life is good. Instead of saying, we're having these challenges, how do we give options so that we can succeed? So started writing that book with the support of Jonathan Gannick, who is also an Oak Table member. And Oak Table is a group of Oracle scientists that there's about 100 of us in the world. And there's only 6 women, again. And we were having the same challenge with our ACE program, which is the same as MVP on the Microsoft side. I was an ACE director, and there was about 6 to 7% on the women. And we had gotten it up to about 11 before I had left and come over to the Microsoft side. It's now down to 4. It's heavily challenged on a regular basis. And what you find is it's not self-sustaining right now. If you can't see it, you can't be it, and you have to continue to support it. You must feed it. And it's because we have this challenge from very early on. And as I did the research, I could realize this, that we were affecting girls, especially we talk about blue and girl aisle. And I mean, there's so many different areas. And you see that in the book. When you start digging into, I told you I had this book from us doing a talk, you'll see every page is covered. And I don't know if you can see it here because it goes blurry, but you'll see tons of reference notes and tons of reference data that goes into this, because everybody was saying this is an opinion. And in fact, there's data behind all of it, that this starts very early on, from the time that even before we're born, where we have the pink room and we're starting to pick out toys for girls and how we affect it. And I had gone through that. I was one of those girls that, I'm an ADHD person. And, I'd be jumping around in the creek along with my male peers and my male cousins, and they'd be like, get out of the creek, Kellyn, you're a little girl, get out, get out. And so by the time I was about 5, I thought it'd be much cooler to be a boy at that point. They get to do the fun stuff. So, but that's what led to the book, and the book has been very successful. I do a lot of kind of, I guess you'd say, I don't know, are they book meetings or even inside Microsoft? I did another podcast last week based on the book for an initial podcast for the Oracle side. But I really did reach out to try to write the book for a lot of the women that I've supported in the Oracle world, and giving them a voice, giving them something that to be able to read about the challenges you're going through, and not to identify it that it's you, to identify that this happens to everyone. Here's the options to get through it, get past it, and to move forward, I think is very empowering. Yeah, that's important. Um, some of them, yes. Some of them, yes. But I want to grow up and become Tony Towns Whitley. I'm sure you know who that name will resonate with you. She's a force of nature inside Microsoft. But if you've ever seen her, she's awesome. She's awesome. Kate Johnson. These are women that if you can see it, you can be it. And I think that's important to have that, that representation. Again, we need to also talk about the women who are technical, such as Anna Hoffman. When we talk about, gosh, brain went blank, Jen. She can kill me next time she sees me. So terrible. But we need representation across the board. And it shouldn't be about so much numbers as much as about doing the right thing, and understand that this problem starts very early on. Because we're focused on now, we're not seeing back then, and that we need to address it earlier on, and that the girls who code and girls develop it, these events are extremely crucial to just introduce technology, that we change the way that we teach children. Education is extremely important. We have reading, writing, and arithmetic. But when we consider how important technology is to our everyday lives, that we need to change our kids from becoming consumers to being creators is crucial, absolutely crucial, and that it needs to start very early on. And it's not to say you must go in tech. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, Kellyn, you want all girls to go into tech? No, I want girls to be introduced to tech to find out. I didn't have that opportunity. If you look back on 2019, the May issue of Wired, I am very, very proud of that issue because D-Tech University is in it, the D-Tech Academy, sorry. And Vani is introduced in there. She's one of my students my first year that I taught Oracle Education Foundation. She was not planning on going into technology, but she ended up there. She's doing IoT devices. And that tells you that just one, that's always, you're just looking for one, that it's the right choice for them and that you've introduced them into technology. And they said, this is for me. This is the right place for me. Every little step, small changes make a big difference. Yes. Yeah. And then you asked how you can make the change. Allyship is extremely important. I know we were talking about this, kind of a weird word, but sponsorship is even more important. Mentoring, women receive mentoring 4 times more often than men. They receive sponsorship 4 times less than men. And by sponsorship, we talk about, let's say a promotion comes up at your work and they go, hey, do you know anybody who might be right for this role? Think about how few times women's name and people of color's name come up in your mind. It just happens. This is bias, unintentional bias. So the idea that we can have a set of names in our head always available to recommend and sponsor. When I started sponsoring very early on, it was very self-serving. People would come to me with opportunities, and I was afraid that one chair at the table would disappear for me. So I would always have that list of names because I figured if I couldn't say yes and I could recommend people, people would be more likely to come to me in the future with opportunities. Having that ability allowed me to sponsor a lot of other folks, and they did well, and they recommended me in turn, and it's all pay forward. It all works very well. But we don't do that so much for women and people of color. So to make those changes, to have that list of names and realize that we have an unintentional bias, that when we're thinking of management, promotions, opportunities, we rarely think of women and we rarely think of people of color because they may not be as quick to step up. They may not be as loud about their accomplishments at work. You think about when we're children, I remember my male cousins would stand up and go, I can too do that, where I remember as a girl being told, Kellyn, you're being awfully mouthy right now, because I was not exactly a wallflower, you know, and you realize that we're told it's better, we're more accepted if we're submissive and we're quiet and we're sweet as girls. The other thing is to help us get past that 1,000 pinpricks. When I have had some challenges, let's say somebody at an event, they had too much to drink and they unfortunately got handsy with me, that a male ally intervened into that situation, that they said, hey, you know what, so-and-so, you should go out and get some food with him. He's waiting for you, you know, your partner. He should go out there. Bye, see ya. And then came up right afterwards and said, are you doing all right? Because I know if somebody put their hands on me, how I would feel. You're good? Okay, good. I want to make sure. Let me know if you need anything. And left me. The idea that it was acknowledged, it happened, and that they checked on me helped, 100-fold to get past that, and that prick disappears. That pinprick disappears. That sounded wrong. That pinprick, you get past it. And I think that's really crucial in a way as an ally, as much as we as women want to say, I can take care of myself. To have those around us just to say, I want to make sure you're all right. I accept this happened. Let me know if you need anything, is huge. Absolutely huge in the times that I have found myself in unfortunate situations. And we're usually downplaying it. We just want it to go away. So we're like acting like nothing's wrong. I remember thinking that too, is that situation going, can anyone else see what's going on? I'm just going to act, it's be assertive and just intervening in the situation. I've had a number of those, and the first thought I've joked about that went through my head this last time it happened was, I'm in my 50s. This should not happen anymore, but it is, and that this individual took the time just to check on me afterwards really made all the difference. We've done that, yeah. A whole group of us at one event made a pact that we would protect this other woman that was there from a guy who was following her around, and constantly intervened in the middle of it, and it distracted him and got him away from her throughout the entire event. And I think that says a lot for your community, that you were standing there to protect it. And it also sends a very clear message to that other person. Oh yeah, the women in the community have had that for years. We've already done that. Yes, yeah. So it's nothing new. We've had to do that for a woman though in the community too. So as much as people say, well, Kellyn, it's always men, no. When we start talking about bias, we have just as many women that have the challenge as men. Bias is not, a single gender. Women can show bias towards women as well. I used to date a very long time ago a male nurse, and the gender bias that he experienced was very interesting to me. That people would come up to him without a second thought and say, "So did you flunk out of nurse school or doctor school? Are you gay?" Would automatically assume it was really disheartening that you can see that it just doesn't happen as much, and that the reason that we have challenges more often with men in IT is because it is, you know, high percentage of men work in the industry. That's all it really is. Yeah, exactly. Culture. And stop serving unlimited alcohol at professional events. That would help too. Yeah. Yeah. That's where I've always seen bad situations come up where I've had, allies come in and intervene, where they've said, you won't ask her that question. You're going to step away from her. Are you doing all right? That have had to intervene in those situations because usually, the person is, I'm very aware that they've had too much to drink. I don't want them to embarrass themselves more. I don't want to be embarrassed by the situation more, or made to feel uncomfortable. How do we deal with this? Those gears are going in your head really, really fast. I'm education over persecution. I believe in taking the person aside. Those that I've come across that have been really angry and repeat offenders, often I have felt that they have not taken them aside originally and were sensitive to the situation and that they needed education and allotment to grow. If they could not grow at that point, let's say that we had repeat serious issues at that point, then I believe still in showing them respect. Um, I have dealt with that. One of the men where, somebody had to intervene and absolutely thank that person so much. We laugh about it now because I obviously like jumped over a table to try to get away from this person when I had the opportunity, but that they tried to not only shame him and had him thrown off of the user group, they wanted him fired from his job, and I refused to have anything to do with it and sat down and said, this is not how we get past and get moving, to education. I will not have anything to do with this. I do want this person not to do this anymore. Don't do this to other women in the community. Understand why this was wrong. My focus is education. It's not persecution. No. Oh my gosh. Okay. 339. 3 and 9 are my lucky numbers, and 13 just to throw it in there. Oh wow. Do I have to explain why? I was willing to do both, but the first name that came to mind, he's gonna love this. He really, really is. David Klee in the SQL Server community, and it's because of his hair. His hair has a life of its own, so I'm pretty sure it's a symbiotic relationship. And you can find, yeah, look up SQL Server and David Klee, and you can tell him I said it's because his hair has a symbiotic relationship and a life of its own, and he will get it completely. He has, yeah, he has 2020 lockdown hair right now. Yeah, you can't tell. I shave my head. I pretty much have a mohawk. It's, yes, yeah, it's all the way around my head. I just shave my head. So, yep. And I put my hair up into a bun and it's all shaved and I put patterns into it. And this is what happens when I get bored on lockdown. I just shave my head. Yeah. I'm not real fearful. Nominate. Um, oh, guess what? Because I remember her last name now, and because this way, hopefully she won't, or maybe she will torch me. I don't know. Jess Borland. Have you interviewed Jess Borland? Okay. And Jess was one of the people that I said, as we start talking about women inside Microsoft that are deeply technical, I think is a really good person. Have you interviewed Buck Woody? So you've already interviewed Buck. Yes. And just because he is awesome and so much funny, I think the interview would be Chris Turner from my group, and I'd be glad to offer a introduction to him. He's Azure Stack. Jen and Sean, they always are. We talk most Fridays in our happy hour. We have virtual happy hours. It's called Keeping Sanity during the lockdown. And they're on, and it's just a riot. It's hilarious.